Hi everyone. So today I wanted to make a video about some recent news I heard that really bothered me, to the point where I wanted to share my own thoughts to those around and also get your feedback on this issue because I'm a little nervous with the precedent that might be established here. So what I'm talking about is the recent decision to remove the Michael Jackson episode from The Simpsons. So, as some background, there's a documentary that came out this year called Leaving Neverland. I haven't watched it. I don't think it's necessary to watch. I'm not sure even if I want to. And after this documentary was released, which was about some of those that apparently Michael Jackson had abused, James L. Brooks, who, if you're any Simpsons fan, you've probably seen his name at the credits. I didn't really know much about him, but I've always seen the name because I really love the show. James L. Brooks decided that they would be pulling the Michael Jackson episode. The official name is called Stark Raving Dad, kind of like Stark Raving Mad, because it's about a crazy guy that Homer meets who claims he's Michael Jackson. And I think this is an iconic episode. It's one I remember when I was growing up. So yeah, there is an emotional connection just to these older episodes of The Simpsons because I really enjoyed this cartoon, and so I want to give my thoughts about this decision, why I'm really not a big fan of it, and to provide some background on my own analysis. So yeah, I'd say the thing to start is what I liked about The Simpsons. I was maybe 11 or 12 when it came out, and it was so much edgier at the time than other cartoons. And so, yeah, I'm dating myself a bit, but the cartoons I'd watched when I were little were just a little more like stories for children. Although The Simpsons had many good endings, these cartoons were very predictable. They were fun to watch. They were not particularly exciting. This wasn't the case with The Simpsons. It was cool, and I say that in every sense of the word. Bart was a cool kid, even though he was a yellow cartoon. He was cool to watch. And I felt The Simpsons really pushed boundaries in cartoons that you hadn't. Of course, Tom and Jerry had violence, and even The Simpsons paid homage to this with, the famous Itchy and Scratchy, but it was different. It wasn't what The Simpsons were doing. And I think a big reason is that the characters often had adult behavior that other characters in the past didn't. It was always made for children, and so the characters were put in the eyes of children. The Simpsons was different. And so, one example of another famous episode that I really liked is the one where, Krusty the Clown is framed. So Krusty gets busted. And I'm assuming anyone I'm speaking to has watched this before, and so I'm going to give away some parts, but it's not a movie. And anyway, it's still enjoyable because the best parts are not me giving the plot line, but the actual cartoon, the characters, and everything. So in this episode, which I also remember, as a kid I liked it, but a lot of things went over my head, and I rewatched it after a long time not seeing it. And it was entertaining still for me, but now from an adult perspective. And I think this is really the art of The Simpsons. Is, in this episode, you're talking about advanced medical conditions that most kids you would kind of dumb down. Like, a big part of the episode is Krusty had a pacemaker in his heart. I didn't know what that was when I was little, but I just was, this is funny. The show talked a lot about betrayal, about the criminal process, mob mentality, which I'll get into, conspiracy, and redemption. And these are all very deep themes. Now, I think you can find them in other cartoons, but they're watered down so much and they're so blatant that it doesn't make the cartoon enjoyable. Where I really felt this was the art of The Simpsons, is you could watch something both as a child and adult and get something out of it and really enjoy it too. And I wanted to bring up this episode because right after Krusty was accused, and keep in mind, if you follow the episode, this was just prior to the trial, the Reverend, in an example of mob mentality, is proceeding over this big sermon, and everyone is throwing all of their crusty gear into it and burning everything because now this guy is horrible. And I find it very ironic because this is what's happening now with the producers of The Simpsons. They are trying to, okay, it's not as extreme, but now they want to blot out and write out one of their episodes. And way back in the day, they were criticizing this not only mob mentality and overreaction, but this sort of censorship in a sense, trying to remove what was once popular at one time. So, that was the first thing that struck me, and I have to give credit. There's a YouTuber named Tim Pool. He pointed this out, and it was actually after watching his video I wanted to throw in my own points about it. So, getting back, I really think The Simpsons had this kind of edgy, I kind of call it a rebel spirit to it, meaning they wanted to push boundaries. And I felt that if it wasn't for The Simpsons, we wouldn't have had the subsequent cartoons like Beavis and Butthead, Ren and Stimpy to an extent, and then, South Park especially, and Family Guy, because they took the door that The Simpsons opened and then they ran through it in their own creative way. So I really think The Simpsons deserves credit for a lot of these things, which is why I'm shocked by this. And getting back to the whole thing with Michael Jackson, I really think we have to make a decision now as bad things are coming out about people. Many of the characters I knew growing up, like Michael Jackson, now Bill Cosby, have these very big stains on their reputation. And what I wanted to bring up and mention is I really think you can separate the artist from the individual. And so what do I mean by that? Well, look at someone like, let's just take Bill Cosby. Look at him. He's up on stage and he's doing a show. Now that's not him in his private life. Just like with the Huxtables, the characters from the Cosby Show. These are fictitious people. I think they send a good message. I mean, if you watch any pre-scandal documentary on Bill Cosby, everyone talks about how inspirational the Cosby Show was. Because at the time it was the first syndicated comedy show with a mostly African American cast that was wildly popular. I mean, that must have inspired who knows how many people to pursue comedy, to pursue acting, to show that a lot of these racial barriers in America had finally been eradicated. Getting back to Michael Jackson, he's a more extreme example. Even when The Simpsons was being filmed, we all knew he was slightly strange. I was younger, so a lot of it, just like the other things, went over my head, but he was a strange guy. We knew he was odd. But people appreciate his music. His music was awesome, I really think there will never be a pop star like him because we have too many mediums now. We have streaming music, streaming video. You can get your media in so many ways. For him to dominate everything at the time was amazing. And so, now that all this is past, now that, the dust is settled, these things are coming up. And I don't like it because I'm finding that trying to go back and change things and unwrite them sets two very bad precedents. The first is we have to know that human beings are not perfect. You can take pretty much anybody and you can find some fault in them because it's this classic quote, to err is human, and we seem to be forgetting that. There is nobody who's perfect. And oftentimes, a lot of these celebrities or people we hold in high regard are severely flawed. So it's very, very difficult to find someone who's never done anything. Even if you look up John Lennon and some testimony about people who knew him, some confessions and books by his family members, he often wasn't a nice person. And so does that mean we should throw out everything from the Beatles? We shouldn't play Let It Be because now that he's gone and time has passed, some people didn't think he was nice. Look at Steve Jobs. Many of you are probably watching this video on some Apple product. We know in the office environment, he was not a nice person. He was abrasive. He belittled people. He called them all kinds of names because, well, he was Steve Jobs. He had personal problems too. But does that negate all the work that he's done? Should we get rid of Apple? And so I raise this issue in kind of this open question because once you start going down this route, where can you end? So, the first point being we're all humans. We all make mistakes. But I think you can separate the good that someone does, the art, from the individual. And it's not to say that in Michael Jackson's case that any of this is excused. But in his case especially, why don't we just leave history alone? Because he's been gone now almost 10 years. You can never have a trial because the main defendant is gone. So how does getting rid of a Simpsons episode improve or make this situation any better? I really don't see that it does. And I think we need to know the weaknesses and limitations of human beings. Maybe it would stop us from idolizing them so much. You can still enjoy his songs without worshiping him. Now, the second point, which I think is very dangerous, is this whole rewriting of history. And especially when, someone who was behind The Simpsons, which made fun of mobs, which, look at the Flanders character. I mean, of course, he was a nice character, but they were also slightly mocking how he was such a fundamentalist and was perfect. And, I remember one scene where, Homer says, oh, well, shouldn't you cast the first stone if you've never sinned? And then the Flanders kids are throwing. I mean, they were slightly, in a way mocking this, and now they're falling prey to it. And really, I think this is a very nasty precedent because once you start taking the eraser and trying to blot out history to make it how you see fit, where does it end? And I'm thinking even, okay, what if Kelsey Grammer, who's Sideshow Bob's voice, what if something terrible unfolds about his life? What if we find out he was a serial rapist? So now are the Simpsons going to have to go back and maybe get rid of his character because this person who did the voice was bad? What if they have to go back now and get rid of all Sideshow Bob references? Maybe they would replace him with Sideshow Mel, who I think is okay or innocuous, and then put in another character to replace Sideshow Mel. It's a silly example, but I think you kind of get the point that once you start going down this way, it can never end. You can start fixing and adjusting, and then suddenly you don't even have the original product, you don't have the art anymore. Instead, what you have is how we are looking at it through our own lenses. So I really think this is a bad decision. I doubt that they will change their mind, but I wanted to voice my own opinion because I'm not comfortable with what's going on. And when this kind of censorship, let's say, battle or feud starts, I'm very nervous about how it will end. So thank you for your time, and feel free to share with me your thoughts as well.